We have here Amy Walter. She is the national editor of the Cook Political Report and a former political director at ABC News. Amy, welcome.
Thanks, Joe.
So today, what was really the focus of your presentation today?
Well, I'm trying to get people to understand sort of how we got here, not just where we are. And this has been a very confounding election for many of us, even those of us who cover it for a living. And yet, the more time that I spend in this election, the more that this election actually makes perfect sense, in that we're just at a real pivotal sort of tipping point, I think, in this country, in terms of where we are economically, with so many people who are frustrated, feeling stuck, the growing gap between people who are middle class and not middle class, people who are falling out of the middle class, but also a sense that the world seems to be shifting and changing moment by moment, and people feeling really unsure. And you top all of that, put on top of all of that, a feeling that institutions are dysfunctional or unable to help and challenge them or take care of them. And so you have an environment that's ripe for people to come in and say, let's shake this whole system up and in some ways start from scratch. The status quo is just totally unacceptable because the status quo has failed us.
So as we go down the road here in the next few months, what do you think what are some of the scenarios that are likely to play out?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest question mark after this primary on the Republican Party ended was whether Donald Trump was going to be able to unite his party and pivot to the general election. So far, he's still unable to completely unify his party, and every day it seems that there's another controversy surrounding something he said where members of his party, especially those in Washington, are trying to find ways to distance themselves from him. But I think the base overall has unified around him. I mean, he's getting support from Republican voters, even though Republicans, elected officials, or in those circles aren't necessarily around him. And the pivoting to the general election, I mean, we've heard very little about Donald Trump making the contrast with Hillary Clinton. That's what a general election is supposed to be, is, okay, I'm now, the nominee on the Republican side. Here's my vision, here's who I am, here's why I'm better or different from Hillary Clinton. Now, some of that he was supposed to do last week, it was pushed off, of course, by the horrible shooting in Orlando. But I think the more difficult thing for Trump has been his inability to sort of stay focused, stay on message, and make this campaign about something other than himself and his own challenges.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that as someone who is covering this on a daily basis, that the chaos and sort of the uncertainty is kind of depressing.
Well, it is depressing in that what we're seeing in this campaign is a real, we have two candidates who aren't particularly well liked. Hillary Clinton is not as disliked as Donald Trump, but she is at historic levels of unfavorable ratings for a Democrat. And what we're seeing is the vote dividing itself by race and gender and education level. And so what I feel like we're getting is an election that is going to make us even more polarized than we already are. And you have folks just really committed to their camp, and that makes for a difficult challenge for whoever wins, because not only are they going to be unhappy because their candidate lost, but they're going to feel that this candidate is completely illegitimate. Mm-hmm. This person who won is illegitimate, and they're not going to see them as president. And that, it makes it impossible to do the job.
Yeah. So, but is there a positive that you can draw from that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think these issues that have been raised, whether it's by Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump or the Black Lives Matter movement or by the folks talking about minimum wage increase, whatever it is, I mean, I think that you have seen a recognition that for many people in this country, they are hurting or challenged, or things that they thought the world was going to be don't look that way. And so we're ripping off, I think, a lot of Band-Aids in this election, saying you got to really, really look at what's underneath this. What is the reason that you have the attraction to certain elements whether it's campaign messaging or whether it's specific groups. What is it that's driving it? You get underneath the Band-Aid, there's a lot of stuff there, but our choice as a country has to be, do we want to fix it? Are we just going to slap another Band-Aid on it? Or are we going to pour salt in it? And right now, there's been, I think, a little too much salt and not enough actual healing. So I think we need to talk about these issues, and I think we need to have a recognition that these are out here. But I worry that we just are leaving them out there and leaving people to sort of sit in it rather than to fix it.
Amy, thanks so much for
Yeah.
talking with us.
Thanks a lot.